Hello, movie lovers! Welcome to Does It Hold Up? Box Office Edition. We didn't have a show last week because life just got in the way and nothing really major happened at the box office. But this past weekend, there was a big movie that hit theaters. It did open at #1, but is that a good thing? Does it actually mean it's a good movie? We're going to find out right now on the show. I'm Adam, and as always, we're going to start with the top 10 movies at this past weekend's box office. In first place was Captain America Brave New World with a total of $89.8 million. That is actually slightly above what estimates were at, and it's an okay opening for the MCU, but it doesn't rank that high. We're going to actually take a look at that at the end of the show. We're going to break down a whole bunch of Marvel's Cinematic Universe numbers, including new things for Captain America Brave New World, so stick around till that. In second place is Paddington in Peru with just $12.7 million. Okay, people, if you have seen Paddington 1 and Paddington 2, you know that they are two of the greatest movies to basically ever exist. So why are more people not going to see Paddington in Peru? I think it's because Sally Hawkins didn't come back to reprise the role of the mom and a new director. So maybe that's why, but it's not looking good for Paddington in Peru right now. In third place is Heart Eyes with a positive. It actually gained 20% over last week in its debut weekend. It made $9.8 million for a grand total right now of $21.4 million. I've heard good things about this one. It's interesting that a horror movie had an increase over its first week. It's a good sign for that movie. In fourth place is Dogman in its third week with $9.8 million, a grand total of $66.8 million. Seems like that was going to be a lot higher when it debuted at #1, but maybe word of mouth just isn't as good as they were hoping for. In fifth place is Neja 2, new to this list, but it has been open overseas for the last couple of weeks. It made $7.3 million here. That's just the estimate. Final numbers for it haven't come in yet. But this movie, worldwide, has grossed over $1 billion already. It's actually made just $1 billion in China, which is absolutely crazy. In sixth place is Mufasa the Lion King in its ninth week with another $4.2 million, $4.24 million. It has an impressive total now of $240.8 million, but it is still way behind the Lion King, quote-unquote, live action from 2019, so it's got a lot of work to do. In seventh place is Love Hurts in its second week, and it kind of hurts to see this movie so far on the list. We all love Kiwi Kwan. Was hoping this movie was going to do better, but it dropped to only $4.2 million in its second weekend. In eighth place, it's still one of them days with another $2.9 million, just under $3 million in its fifth week. It's made a pretty good total right now of $43.5 million here domestically, way more than I think they assumed they would make when this movie was first put out. In its third week, The Companion ends up in ninth place with another $1.8 million. It's slowly working its way towards $20 million. And in 10th place in its second weekend is Becoming Led Zeppelin with $1.75 million. Grand total for that movie is $5.4 million here domestically. That's an okay top 10. I wouldn't really say it's anything special other than that #1 movie. Like I said, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Before we get there, though, we are going to take a look at our comparison chart, where we compare every weekend in 2024 to the same weekend here in 2025 to see how movies are kind of holding up, right? Are we winning weekends here this year, proving more people are going back to the theater now than they were a year ago, or are movies starting to fall off? So let's go ahead and take a look at that line chart. It is the 6th week of the calendar year, and last year in 2024, Argylle was the #1 movie for its second weekend, which is absolutely crazy. Argylle was a god-awful movie, so insane that it was actually #1 at the box office for 2 weeks in a row shows you how bad 2024 was for movies. It led the way with all movies making $35 million. And as you can see on the chart, this year that green line is way above it. Because with that pretty good opening, $90 million opening for Captain America Brave New World, this entire weekend, every movie made a grand total of $152.6 million. So far, in 2025, only the second weekend was less than the same weekend last year. So that's a very good sign for theaters, studios, people who love going to the movies. It seems that there's a little bit of an uptick for people wanting to go sit in theaters and actually watch the movies the way we were supposed to watch them. The next chart we're going to look at is the top 10 movies of 2025. Not just movies that came out this year, it's any movie that's made money. So a lot of these movies came out in 2024, but we are only counting the gross that they took in since January 1st. In first place is still Mufasa the Lion King with $112.7 million. That's really impressive for just this year when it came out late 2024. Captain America Brave New World is new to the chart and jumps right into second place with $89.8 million. It's most likely going to be first place next week. Sonic drops down to third place with $82.9 million. Dogman jumps up from 7th to 4th with $66.8 million, dropping Moana all the way down to 5th place from 3rd with $53.6 million. In 6th place is Nosferatu, dropping from 4th place with $47.5 million. One of Them Days jumps from 9th to 7th with $43.5 million. A Complete Unknown has tied for the biggest drop on the chart this past week, going all the way from 5th place to 8th place with $42.3 million. Joining it with the biggest drop is Wicked, going from 6th to 9th with $39.4 million. And Den of Thieves 2 drops 2 places down to 10th with $35.9, or about $36 million. One movie fell off this chart, and that was Flight Risk, which is not a big surprise because that movie just was not a hit. Okay, so everybody wants to talk about Captain America, The Brave New World. Not the just Brave New World. Red Hulk, Eternals lore, everything is kind of thrown into this movie. Can Sam Wilson be the new Captain America? Will people actually care enough to go to the theaters to see him in action? Well, it turns out that maybe. I mean, it had a decent opening, just around $90 million this past weekend, but where does that rank in the pantheon of Marvel movies? Just MCU movies, Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're not talking all the Spider-Man movies or even Howard the Duck, but just MCU. So over the next couple of charts, what you're going to look at is the first one is a breakdown of all the MCU movies and how much they made on their opening weekend. This chart is not adjusted for inflation, so this is exactly how much they made in the year that they came out. In first place, no surprise, is Avengers Endgame with that $357 million. That's not really gonna be touched. Spider-Man No Way Home had that impressive $260 million back in 2021. And then Avengers Infinity War. I mean, Endgame and Infinity War were two of the biggest hits for Marvel to date. They were the culmination of 3 phases of movies. Of course, they're going to be high on this list. You can see Deadpool and Wolverine, then the Avengers in 5th, Black Panther in 6th. That was a real surprise to everybody back in 2018 when it came out. Avengers Age of Ultron. So all 4 of the Avengers movies are in the top 7 opening weekends of all time for Marvel. And again, these aren't adjusted for inflation, so some of these could be moving around. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness from 2 years ago had a pretty good opening, which was kind of weird. Black Panther Wakanda Forever's in 9th. Captain America's Civil War in 10th place with about $179 million. Iron Man 3, all the way back, had a $174 million opening, and it came in 11th place. Captain Marvel's in 12th, Guardians Volume 2 in 13th, Thor Love and Thunder 14th, Iron Man 2 in 15th with $128 million. Then in 16th, Thor Ragnarok, $122 million. Guardians Volume 3, Spider-Man Homecoming, Ant-Man 3, and Iron Man are 17 through 20. Incredible, the 20th highest opening of all time for the MCU was the first MCU movie. I bet if we adjusted for inflation, that movie would jump up quite a bit of spots. Then in 21st is Captain America, The Winter Soldier, followed by Guardians Volume 1, Spider-Man Far From Home in 23rd, and right here in 24th is Captain America, Brave New World. So not bad when you look at it compared to Far From Home, only $3 million behind. It beats out Thor The Dark World, which only made $85 million in 25th place. So it's A much better opening than I think a lot of people were expecting for this movie, but again, these numbers are unadjusted, so if we adjusted all of them, it would probably fall really far down on the list. Doctor Strange is in 26th, and then in 27th, this is a weird one. Black Widow made $80 million during its opening, but you can see the little asterisk there, and that's because this opened during the pandemic. Theaters really weren't open yet, or most of them weren't, and they were only at half capacity, so the fact that Captain America Brave New World only made $9 million more during a time that people could just freely go to the theater above Black Widow, which had a whole bunch of stuff going against it, says a lot about the quality of Brave New World. Ant-Man and the Wasp is in 28th, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings in 29th, Eternals in 30th, Thor, yes, the original Thor had one of the lowest openings for the MCU in 31st, followed by Captain America, the First Avenger. Everybody looks at Phase 1 very highly. They remember it fondly, but they did not open very well. Ant-Man, the original, is in 33rd place. The Incredible Hulk, the second ever MCU movie, is in 34th. And then the Marvels, from just a year ago, $46 million, rounds out the 35th MCU movie. So that's a lot of interesting numbers to look at, see where it kind of falls. It's the 24th highest opening weekend of all time for the MCU, unadjusted. But what does that mean for the long term? Is that destined to be a pretty good grosser for Marvel, for Disney? Well, over the next couple of charts, we're going to take a look. The first one is CinemaScore. If you don't know what CinemaScore is, it's a company that goes to opening weekends at certain theaters, and they hand out questionnaires after somebody's watched the movie. You fill it out and you give it a grade, A through F. Then they tally everything up and they give the movie an average grade. The higher your average grade, the better the movie. Now, this isn't just about, is the movie good? It's about, did the movie meet expectations? If you went in thinking it was going to be a horror movie, but it ended up being a romantic drama, well, you're going to rank it really low, regardless if it was a good movie. So take with that what you will, but let's go ahead and take a look at all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies and where they ranked in CinemaScore. 4 movies got the A+, the coveted A+ rating. Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man No Way Home, The Avengers all the way back in 2012, and Black Panther all ended up with an A+. Bulk of the movies here got an A score. They were good, they just weren't great. Ant-Man, Age of Ultron, Doctor Strange, Iron Man 2, Spider-Man Far From Home, Infinity War, Wakanda Forever, Guardians of the Galaxy, Iron Man 3, Spider-Man Homecoming, Civil War, The Winter Soldier, Guardians Volume 2, Iron Man, Thor Ragnarok, Captain Marvel, Deadpool and Wolverine. Thought that one would have been a little bit higher. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Shang-Chi all got that A grade. 5 movies got an A-, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Black Widow, Captain America the First Avenger, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor the Dark World. 4 movies got a B+. They are Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Eternals, Thor Love and Thunder, and Thor. You can see the quality of the movies is definitely dropping here. The B rating went to Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and the Marvels, and the only one, the lowest grade ever for the MCU, is the movie they just hit theaters this past weekend, Captain America Brave New World. What does that say about Captain America 4 if one of the most hated movies in the entire MCU, The Marvels, which went on to gross no money whatsoever, was rated more highly? It had a better grade than this movie. So, again, what does that say? Well, if you look at all of these movies and you see what their multiplier was, meaning how much did they go on to gross over what they did in their opening weekend. So if they made $100 million in their opening weekend and then they made $300 million overall, they would have a 3x multiplier. They made 3 times the amount that they made that first weekend. So we're going to look at all the multipliers for all of the MCU. I'm not going to go through every single one because that's going to be on the next chart. We're just going to roll right into both of them back to back. But you'll see the entire list here and you'll see where Captain America Brave New World falls, and then I'll explain how I know. So you can take a look here at the Marvel multiplier. The first movie on the list is Spider-Man Far From Home, not the big money maker that No Way Home was, but it had the best multiplier, 4.23 times. So what it opened up to, 4.23 times that is what it ended up making. You can go through this whole list and you can see 4.23. Then the 20th movie, Thor Ragnarok, which was a pretty good grosser for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, only at a 2.57 multiplier. Wakanda Forever, only 2.5. And then we get towards the bottom of the list. The last one, in 34th place, is the Marvels, 1.83 times. But look below it there, highlighted. At number 35 is Captain America, Brave New World. Right now, it's 1.66 times multiplier. And you're like, wait, it doesn't have a final gross. How do we know that? Well, here's kind of how I figured it out. I went through and did a whole bunch of work to figure it out. 4 movies had an A+ cinema score. If you added up all of their multipliers, then divided by that 4, you could see that the average for an A+ movie was 3x. The average for an A movie was 2.84, A- 2.54, B+ 2.41, and B 1.93 multiplier. Big drop there. You can see down here it says average step down between each grade is minus 0.27 points. So what I did here is added up all of the drops. So 3x to 2.84 is 0.16x. I did the difference between each one of those numbers and then divided by 4 to see what the average step down was. So if we do 1.93x minus 0.27, that's how we end up with the 1.66 multiplier. This is just an estimate. I'm not sure that's exactly what it's going to end up at, but it's a place to get started. That was a lot of numbers that we just went through, a lot of weird things, but when it all comes down to it, Brave New World opened up in the 24th spot. A lot of people would say that's not bad. And to be honest, it's really not. But I think interest in the movie was piqued as in like, how's Sam Wilson going to do as Captain America? Is he going to be a good replacement? It was more intrigue about how bad the movie was going to be rather than excitement for how good the movie could be. So, had a bad grade. B-, lowest in the MCU. Easily. I mean, most movies were an A- or higher, very few were a B+ and lower, and then this one ends up as the lowest B-, the only one that's ever gotten that grade. Then when you do the work and you get that 1.66 multiplier, estimated, maybe that's not a good sign for this movie. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that breakdown is for Captain America: Brave New World. The cinema score for the movie, like I said, was a B-. Its opening, $89.8 million, solid opening. But if you look at the estimated multiplier, 1.66, we take that number, we times it by its $89.8 million opening, and you can see that the estimated total domestic gross for Captain America: Brave New World is going to be about $149.1 million. It was the 24th best opening, but if I'm correct, and that is roughly the multiplier that it's going to get, and the total gross domestically for the movie when everything's all said and done, it will be the 3rd lowest total for any MCU movie ever. And if it gets that number and is the 3rd lowest of all time, the only movies it would be above are The Incredible Hulk, which made $134.8 million unadjusted. So adjusting it would most likely and would put it over Captain America: Brave New World. So really, it would only be above one other movie, The Marvels. And we all know how everybody feels about The Marvels. So the numbers, they don't lie. There's not a good outlook for Captain America 4. That could be for a lot of factors. People are growing tired of the MCU. A lot of their last couple of movies haven't been very good, so people are disenfranchised, disillusioned with everything that's happening in this cinematic universe, and they're starting to show it at the box office. No longer can Disney and Marvel pump out mediocre garbage and expect people to just show up anyway. To me, it's a lot like video games. Video games in the past used to be really good. You bought a game, you got the entire game. There was nothing extra. You put the disc in, you put the cartridge in, and you just had the game in its complete form. Lately, and Marvel started that way, but lately, it's much more like modern gaming. They give you a movie, but you know they're going to have to send out some patches. They're going to have to fix it after its release. And then they're going to expect you to kind of want a little more. They're not putting their all into it anymore, and it's definitely starting to show, and people are starting to vote with their wallets. They don't want that anymore. They will not fall for it. All right, that's it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about everything we talked about. Did you see Captain America Brave New World, and did you think it's as bad as basically everyone's saying? I'll be back again later this week with not a box office thing, that's this episode. I'll be back later this week with an Oscar redux, so like, share, subscribe, you never miss a video from us. And until I see you again, just remember to be good to yourself, kind to others, and keep watching movies.